Thank you for coming in. The Columbian Editorial Board is pleased to welcome representatives from Battleground Public Schools here to talk about the bond measure that is on the February 13th ballot, I believe. So first we'll go around. I'm Greg Jane, by the way, editorial page editor, and Craig Brown, managing editor of the paper. I apologize, the other editorial board members are out sick, as you can imagine, it's going around. And just so you know, we are videotaping this. We'll post it unedited on our website for the benefit of our readers, just to help them get information about the ballot measure, and we'll go from there. So why don't we start with, could you please introduce yourselves?
Sure. So I'm Mark Ross, superintendent of Battleground School District. This is actually my first year as superintendent, but my fourth year in the district. So I was assistant superintendent prior to becoming superintendent.
Okay.
Megan Hayden, I'm the director of finance with the district, and I'm going on my 5th year with the district.
Denny Waters, deputy superintendent, and this is my 11th year with the district, but first year in this position.
And I'm Rita Sanders, I'm the communications manager, and this is my 4th year in the district.
Okay, again, thank you all for coming in. Why don't we start with Mark, explain the nuts and bolts of the bond measure.
Sure. Well, you really have to go back about 2 years ago when a citizens group was formed in the district, with citizens representing all areas of the district, with representatives from the district kind of sitting in and providing resources and information to them. And that citizens group really took a look at the needs of the Battleground School District. Since we hadn't passed a bond since 2005, it was the last bond that was passed. So they did a study and survey of the conditions of the building, talked to realtors about what was the expected growth in the area. We could see it, but also what was the expected growth in the future. Also wanted to make sure that we were looking at buildings that would qualify for state matching funds, buildings that were 30 years or older. That was important to that group, that citizens committee. So they put together a long-range facilities plan, a plan that would expand over 18 to 20 years, and the plan would be in 3 phases: phase 1, 2, and 3, and each phase would be about a 6-year phase. And so the first phase would obviously address the immediate needs of the district, and also making sure that they were utilizing that qualifying for state matching funds. So looking at projects that fit the needs and qualified for those matching funds. Looked at buildings that qualified as poor structurally as far as earthquake prevention. So we put together a plan to, the major projects would be to replace on-site the Glenwood-Lauren campus, meaning our K-8 campus there, a middle school and a primary. Glenwood being built in the 1950s, so 60-year-old building. It was built for 480 kids, now houses 800 students. That campus actually together holds about 1,500 students currently. That would be replaced on site. Also replaced on site would be the Pleasant Valley campus, which is again a middle school and a primary. Currently, Pleasant Valley does not have cafeteria. It was built in the California design with all outside entrances. It was built in the 70s, so it's 40 years old. Replace that on site. Then another major project would be to build a new K-8 campus on district-owned property on the east side of the southeast side of the district, where we're seeing a lot of our potential growth, new growth and potential growth. So that would be a new K-8 campus. In addition to that, about 40% of Prairie High School.
I'm sorry, real quick. The new K-8, that would be an additional school. That wouldn't be replacing.
It would be an additional school, so it's on a green site. So it would be yeah, completely new primary and middle school.
Okay, and I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, you bet. Another project would be Prairie High School. About 40% of Prairie High School would be replaced. That part of Prairie High School, again, qualified for state matching funds and kind of rated poor structurally. So many of the what we call the career technical education skill type buildings would be replaced at Prairie High School. In addition to that, some other projects. Almost every building will be touched in the district with either some upgrades. There'll be some covered play areas in some of the schools that don't have covered play areas. More importantly, too, we're going to take a look at security issues at some of our schools, redo some of the door locks, look at what camera systems we have, do some major carpeting overhauls in the big buildings like Battleground. District Stadium, the artificial turf there, it will be replaced. So those are some of the major projects.
And the one that you missed was the ALE campus.
And also we have a building now that we're currently leasing, and so we wanted to make sure we wanted to get out of that leased building and put the ALE campus, which is CAM, one of our ALE campuses, on district-owned property.
So how much is the ask?
Budget person.
The ask is about $224.8 million for local, with about $61.6 million in state assistance funds. So for a total of a $286.5 million total package.
What does it take to qualify for the state matching funds?
Well, you have to have, there's two qualifications. It can either be a 30-year-old structure rated poor, which Mark kind of mentioned, and also there's another factor of eligibility that can also qualify you for state assistance. Due to
What
growth.
does that mean?
Due to growth.
Growth,
Oh,
enrollment
okay.
growth eligibility.
And on the age side, it's that it hasn't been touched by state matching funds in 30 years. So the building
Okay.
could be older than 30, but if you've touched it with state funds in the past 30 years, it's not eligible.
So for instance, Battleground High School, we get lots of questions about Battleground High School, whether or not we would consider putting that on the bond. Battleground High School was significantly remodeled in 1996.
Oh.
So if you go out to 30 years, you're looking at 2026 before Battleground would be eligible for state funds again.
You mentioned there's 3 phases then. Is this is phase one of the first 6 years of your approximately 20-year plan then?
Yeah.
So the Battleground High School might be in one of the
Right,
subsequent
and if you look
phases.
at the facility, the long-range facilities plan, you'll see that in stage, I believe it's stage 2, we start discussions about Battleground High School.
So, but this bond would just cover phase 1
Yes.
of the
Correct.
plan. Got it.
Correct.
And what would be the term of the bond?
We're right now anticipating to be complete with projects by the end of 2022, so about 4 years of construction is the projection at this point. That can
But the
vary.
bond
The bond
itself.
itself.
Oh, I'm sorry, the bond itself. 20 years to 21-year term.
Talk a little bit about how much of this is refurbishing for what you already have, and how much of this is to cover new enrollment growth. It strikes me that we had the Evergreen folks in, and they said, and you think about it, it's true that their growth is going to be limited because their buildable land is pretty much used up. But I think Battleground may be still in a different situation where you have significant growth coming.
We do, and the major projects down, in our southern end really are, we kind of call it a perfect storm, where those are our oldest buildings in the district and really now are the most crowded because that's where we're seeing the most growth. And we have just, we have talked about, we've looked at our real estate agents, we've looked at developments that are around there, and we know there's a prediction that growth is going to continue to come. This year we gained 200 more students. So our issues are not just that the buildings, the major projects are older, but they're also crowded. And we'll continue to see growth in that area. So there truly is a need, and that's what the FIT saw, that there was a need to replace those older, aging, unsafe buildings, really, because of the California design, and then also to account for future growth. And when we say future growth, not just this year, next year, but really 6, 7, 8 years down the road, we're predicting the growth, and we're predicting that we're going to need schools for that.
Yeah, so some interesting numbers. I mean, since the last bond in 2004, our enrollment was 11,908 students, and our current enrollment is 13,830, which is a 1,922 student increase, which represents a 16% growth for us.
That's about 2 schools.
Yeah,
worth of
yeah.
bodies.
And we've done an enrollment study, and we've got some preliminary results. We don't have the final results, but in that enrollment study, there's the potential for 2,300 additional students in the next 10 years. So you know, we have heard from people to say, you know, where are the numbers in terms of growth? And so we're looking at this bond not only to meet what our current needs are, but anticipating what our needs are also going to be.
And the 2005 bond did, did put some newer buildings and accommodate for growth kind of in the central area of the district and the north area. So Amboy got a new building, Tukes Valley, Daybreak, those were all new buildings accommodating for growth and replacing
Chief Middle School,
Chief Middle School, replacing the old Louisville. The southern end, again, where we're seeing the growth, and I think Megan said that 40%.
40% of our population in the district lives within those boundaries of Pleasant Valley, Glenwood, Lauren, Prairie.
Oh, wow, that much?
Yes.
And when you consider the size of our district, 273 square miles, you know, we go from, you know, the suburbs of Vancouver, you know, all the way up to, you know, the...
I know it's certainly a very dissimilar
Yeah.
Lifestyles and populations. You've
Yeah.
got a very suburban pattern
Yes.
as your south end, and more
Yes.
of a rural pattern.
Right. But with that, with the largeness of our district, 40% of the population of the district is in those boundaries
No
of
kidding.
Pleasant Valley and Glenwood, Lauren. So you can see.
I think it was, you mentioned Glenwood, was that the one, it was built in the 1950s with a capacity of 400?
Yeah, at that time it
Or
was
designed
designed for about 480 students in 1956. 1956.
Sputnik was launched.
So it's a space age.
Yes, it is a space age school.
So currently that building has about 800 students, and then Lauren right next to it, which was built for a capacity of about 500, I believe,
Right.
has 700 students. So that campus has 1,500 students. So right now, currently about 40% of that campus is in portable buildings because of the growth.
So we have 42.
That's between the two schools.
Yes,
Yeah.
so we have 42 classrooms that are inside the buildings of those two schools, and we have 33 classrooms that are in portables. And you know, people have asked us, you know, well, what is the capacity of that school? How, you know, can you continue to grow that school? And you know, the answer is yes, but at what cost? You know, is that what's best for students? Is that the optimal learning environment? The other thing that we have to consider is that, you know, we can continue to add more classrooms to house students, but it doesn't change our core facilities. You know, it doesn't increase the size of the parking lot. It doesn't increase the size of the cafeteria. It doesn't increase the size of the library. And as you add more staff, you add more teachers in classrooms, you also need more staff to support kids. You need more secretaries because your office is bigger. You need additional nurses. You need school psychologists. You need counselors. All of those things require space as well. I was
That was
over
important,
at,
the Evergreen Aid,
yeah. I was over at Glenwood yesterday and was watching. We happened to be there during lunch, and I was watching the fourth graders. There were 177 fourth graders eating lunch. And if you've been to Glenwood, they have this little tiny portable cafeteria. They can't even fit in that portable cafeteria, so they travel over to the middle school and eat lunch in the middle school.
And in the Lauren
right,
building,
right,
in the
right,
Glenwood
and the
building.
middle school accommodates
Right.
them. So you know, it's things like that that we look to the reason that we need a new campus as well.
But they do have a cafeteria. At
Yeah.
Pleasant Valley, they don't have a cafeteria at all. So the students will line up kind of in the hallway outside the main office where their food line is, and then they'll take their food, and then they'll go through kind of the library hallway and maybe even outside into the classroom to eat their lunch out in their classes. So we've talked about, you know, different designs there, but you know, again, without restructuring their core facilities, their gyms, their libraries, there really isn't an affordable way to make that happen.
And people have asked us, you know, how do you build a school without a cafeteria? I don't know. We weren't around in 1971 when they decided to build a school without a cafeteria, but they did. It's really interesting if you get a chance on our website. I believe we posted a video, and it shows the journey of the students who have to, you know, how they eat their lunch at Pleasant Valley. It's a great video to take a look at. Really does a nice job of really painting the picture of what it's like for those students.
Talk a little bit about school security. One thing that I know about Pleasant Valley is it's got, what do you call it, California style?
Yes,
There must be
correct.
30 exterior
Yeah.
doors
Yeah.
between those buildings, and that isn't a good design standard anymore.
Yeah, there really isn't. There's one kind of central core area where the library is, and you can you can reach classes from the inside, but for students to access their classrooms when they come to school, they're dropped off at the buses, it's all outside access. So all of the doors are outside with, you know, and they lock from the outside, they lock from the inside, so that's one thing in all of our buildings we're going to take a look at. So it really, you know, those buildings were designed, again, to save money because hallways are space. Space costs money, so they were designed, they were designed to not have hallways. And Lauren is that way as well. Lauren's kind of in pods.
I thought it was.
Yeah,
I
Lauren,
couldn't remember.
Yeah, Lauren's exactly that way. And Prairie High School is that way. So again, taking a look at not only when we rebuild the new schools, but taking a look at when we remodel some of the schools that aren't rebuilt, we'll have to look at, you know, secure door locks, card key access, camera systems, things like that will be addressed in the bond.
When you're talking about security, obviously the main issue is that you want to funnel all of your visitors into one spot. This is the way they get into the building. You know, you'll see at the more modern, right, at the more modern schools, you know, you go through a door and then there's another door that prevents you from walking into the school, and you have to go to the office and check in. That's what we're looking at. And you're exactly right, Greg. You can't. You know, I mean, it's if you would drive up to Lauren, for instance, you can go in 15 directions to access classroom space, and that's what, you know, and it's a different age. I mean, we all know.
Right, sure.
We all know in 1956 when you built the school, nobody was thinking about the things that happen now on school campuses, but now we have to, and so that's a reality for us.
So what? So 2005 was your last bond that you passed.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking that you probably are one of that. Almost every other school district in Clark County has passed a bond and done some projects since 2005. So does that sound about right? So it's been a while.
It's been a while, and again, I think we're, you know, trying to be good stewards of you know, public's money, and we built in 2005 Tukes Valley and Daybreak and Chief with what we call the prototypical design. So I wanted to mention that too, and kind of saving money this bond around, we're going to go back to that same design.
Oh, really?
We've met with some of the teachers who have kind of lived with that design now for 10, 12 years and asked them what would you tweak with it, but pretty much you'll see that the Glenwood Lauren and the Pleasant Valley and the new K8 will all be kind of look the same. So we use that design so that our contractors or developers, I mean, they know the design, and so it saves us money by that, you know, saying, hey, you know, here's what we need for the entrance, here's what the doors, here's, you know, here's the planning. So it really saves money kind of in the not only the planning end, as far as not having an architecture needs several different designs, but also in the construction end phases as well. So we'll use those prototypicals that we used way back in 2005 with some tweaks here and there. That we've learned some lessons. You know, it's been, you know, 12 years that some of those buildings have been around. So we've learned some lessons, and we'll make some tweaks.
Have you made any bond requests since then, or is this the first time you've gone to voters before? Or since '05?
We last year we ran this bond. We tweaked it a little bit because we knew with the added construction costs, looking at projecting costs in the 6 years of the bond, we added the ALE campus. So we ran the bond.
We increased size of the building.
Increased size of the building. So we ran a bond last year in November during the November election, and things weren't in the, you know, the best atmosphere for people to take a look at taxes. And but we actually got 55.4%. So we had a majority yes vote, but as you know, bonds takes that 60% supermajority. So, you know, we were close. After that bond and the failure of the bond last year, the FIT reorganized, FIT being the Facilities Improvement Team, this group of citizens, they came back together and we asked them, should we run it? Should we run it again? You know, do we need to restructure it? Do we need to do, you know, cut a project? And they said, no. This citizens group said the need is still there. Our buildings are overcrowded. We're still seeing the population growth. The need is going to be there for 6-7 years down the road. They recommended to our board that we run the bond again, and the board approved that and put it on the ballot for January.
What makes you think it'll be different this time?
Well, I think we can go to the voters, kind of like Evergreen said, with a tax rate that is projected to be less than what they're paying now. And so I think that's the big advantage for our voters, is that currently, in 2017, our total tax rate is around 602,
602.
603 for all the levies and the bonds and the state and the state. That's the total per thousand tax rate. There'll be a bump, as everybody knows, in 2018 because of the raise in the state tax levy. Our levy rate will be the same, but because of the state decision around the cleary, there's going to be that bump. But when we collect for the bond in 2019, our rate will actually drop to that $1.50, and the tax rate will drop by 2-3 cents. It's projected to drop. So they're actually getting a bond for less of a tax rate than they currently have. So we think that's a good sell to our voters. We think interest rates are low to sell our bond. Again, the homes are still being built, so we just think, and construction costs aren't going to go down as we're seeing. In 2005, we believe.
Yeah, substantially.
2005, we think the square footage cost of construction was
$170.
$170 a square foot, and now we're up around $450, $500 a square foot.
Right. So, even last year, when they were looking at the bond, they were looking at $280 a square foot, and now, as Mark said, it's 400, 450, 500. It's just incredible. The costs have skyrocketed.
Well, the people that are doing the waterfront are saying the same thing.
Yeah.
It's not just school districts.
No, it's not just
right.
school.
And we looked at projects, and I think Evergreen mentioned that. We looked at Camas and Ridgefield and the projects they were doing, and they're concerned that some of the projects, may not completely get done because of that inflated cost. So we wanted also to make sure that we built in the projected inflation cost as well, or kind of that 6-year period.
Is that the biggest reason for the change in the size of the bond? Because this one's 224, the other one is 80.
Yeah.
So it's 3 times more.
That really is the biggest, the added project of CAM, and then the construction costs, and making sure that we add in that inflationary cost as well too.
Well, the
so
other
you're
thing.
covered to make sure you.
Yeah, we don't want to promise a project and not be able to fulfill that because we didn't project.
And I will say
for
that the other
actual
part of
cost.
it is that in the last bond, they were just going to replace Pleasant Valley and the Glenwood Lawrence School at their current size. And those are about 95,000 to 100,000 square foot campuses. And we decided that, then that was in order to maximize the state match. I mean, you can't, anything that you build beyond the current size, you're having to foot the bill yourself. And we decided that, that wasn't going to get it done for those campuses. So we increased it, and now the square footage is about 125,000.
Oh, okay.
And that additional square footage is also part of the increase in the bond.
Oh, okay. Well, if you drive between Chuck's Produce and BC Farms like I do, you see all these new streets with all these new houses.
Right.
And I know those are in the Valley Around School District.
Right.
So I would assume that they're going to go to Pleasant Valley and to Lauren.
I would say too, the need for extra space, extra classrooms comes from growth, but it also comes from requirements from the state, K-3 class size requirements. So now you're looking at a 17-to-1 ratio, that if you want to be able to get that K-3 class size dollars from the state, you're going to have to keep those ratios down, which means fewer kids in a classroom, so you're going to need more classrooms than you have in the past.
Well,
and all-day kindergarten as well. So
Yeah,
for Battleground, that's a fairly new thing. We just added all-day kindergarten.
And that
2
was
years ago.
we went
2 years ago.
from 24 kindergarten classes to 48 kindergarten classrooms because we were going half day. And people don't recognize that. They're thinking, well, your enrollment isn't growing that much. You should be able to accommodate these kids. But when you talk, as Mark just talked about the requirement for 17 students in a class for K-3, and then the requirement for all-day kindergarten, and the fact that we just added 24 kindergarten classrooms, they have to go somewhere. And for instance, like a school like Glenwood has 7 kindergarten classes.
Wow, that's a lot.
Yeah, that's a lot.
But 24 classrooms, that would be the size of an elementary
Yes,
school.
yes,
right there.
that's the size. That's the size of an elementary school. And so, I'm glad that Mark pointed out that it's not just about enrollment. It's also about some of the conditions that have changed the state has placed on us.
If for some reason you had a little bit of money left over at the end of the construction cycle in 4 years, would you apply that to phase 2 and launch with that, or what would you do with that money? I know last time after the 2005 bond, some of the money was returned to the voters.
Mm-hmm.
Well, there's always projects. Like you said, there's phase 1 projects, and then if you could get some of those phase 2 projects done sooner, I think that you probably would look at doing that. Or would you look at additional needs? I mean, we didn't, you know, these are needs for overcrowded schools, for growth, but you know, there's always need where some of our buildings we're going to add STEM classrooms. So in our middle schools particularly, we're going to look at, you know, remodeling some of the classrooms to meet the needs of 21st century learning. Well, there's a limit to that with the budget. So if there is maybe some excess money there, that might be some additional things that we look at, is, you know, additional spaces in classrooms for those 21st century learning, technology, things like that. It would be great if there was a little extra left over.
I was going to say, we would be thrilled if there was money left
I mean,
over.
this is a good problem, right?
Right. I think most people are nowadays with bonds, and you're passing it as you're just crossing your fingers and hoping you have enough money to build the projects that you promised because of the inflation.
Yeah, well, it's going to be 3 windows short of the job, yeah. Right.
Exactly.
Yeah, that would be bad.
What's your best guess? What impression are you getting? Is there widespread support for this, or
there certainly is a good feel. I mean, I think that
has support grown since last year, or
has support grown?
Yeah,
I think I think we've done a better job of there's a learning curve associated with running a bond, and certainly not that any of us were involved heavily in the last bond, but we learned a lot from the last bond, and so I think that we've done a good job of getting out there and meeting with our constituents and making sure that they understand exactly what we're trying to do. And the feel that we get is generally positive. I mean, you're always going to have people who don't want to pay taxes, that are out there that might feel a little hesitant to pass a bond. But generally, the feedback that we've been getting has been very supportive. That's nice.
Yeah, I've had a real positive feeling, even in and we've tried to do informational sessions in all parts of the district, and in the north and in the south, and I've gotten a good feeling from the questions people ask are real positive, more about what are the projects, what's it going to do, less questions why why do you need to do it, or I'm not supportive of it. So I've gotten a lot of good support, I think.
Yeah, and one of the things we've done differently this time compared to the last time we ran it was, last time we focused more on the process, and this time we are definitely getting as much information as we can out about the needs, because we have a lot of needs in the district. So we are using all our resources, our website, we did an informational mailer, social media, information nights, to get the information to as many people as we can.
I've lived in the district for, this is 27 years that I've lived in the district. Both of my kids went through the Battleground School District, and it's a community that cares for kids and wants to do what's best. And I think people are, feeling it's changing because of the numbers of new people that are moving in, and but people want to do what's best for kids. People care deeply about the students in the Battleground School District. I'm hopeful that we'll see this.
Along those lines, one question, one concern that I've heard is that a couple of years ago there was some turmoil within the district, and the superintendent left, and there was a payout of, I think, $400,000. And some people I know were concerned about that and accountability within the district. How do you deal with those concerns? How do you reassure people?
And when people say a couple of years, it's almost 5 now.
Sure.
So my hope is that with former Superintendent Mark Hottaway and myself, that we are transparent, and I think the board is very concerned about being transparent. We've always encouraged people to ask questions. If there are things out there on social media that people don't understand, encourage them to look at our website. We try to put as much information out there. We're available for phone calls, so I think it's just trying to be transparent. I've been out in the community as much as possible and speak to the Rotary, speak to the Chamber of Commerce, really just get ourselves out in the community so they know us. They know that we don't feel like we have anything to hide, and hopefully we're building that trust. I understand it takes a while in the community to build that trust back, but I think in the past 4 years, I think we've done a pretty good job of that.
What happens if the bond doesn't pass? what's your next step?
Well, yeah, you hate to think about that. You know, some people say, well, you have some room in some of your other schools, but if you're looking at the home developments, there are not just home developments in the south end, but there are home developments all over. So we can look at the Cedars Golf Course area, which is kind of in the central core, over by Daybreak on the west end, even up by Amboy and Yakul, there are home developments going in. So we would have to look at bringing more portable buildings in to some of those schools. We would have to look at boundary adjustments, but the boundary adjustments are really only going to, they're only going to be in effect, have an effect for a couple years, because, like I said, you know, growth is really happening more so in the south end, but pretty much everywhere in the district. So.
You know, that's interesting, because a boundary adjustment in a school district like Evergreen or Vancouver might mean that a student, you know, you change a boundary line and a student is going 3 miles in this direction instead of, you know, 1.5 miles in this direction, just because of the location and the number of schools and all of that. A boundary exchange, a change in Battleground School District is a little bit different, because, you know, right, I mean, from our southern schools to our core schools, it's a significant distance, you know. So when you change a boundary, you're really changing, you know, you're moving a kid a substantial direction in another direction. So that, you know, that always has to be taken into account too.
Sure. And boundary changes inevitably generate
by themselves
some rancor.
Right.
Yeah, they do, and it's not something I think any district likes to think about. And as Debbie said, in Battleground with 275 square miles, it's not, you know, it's not something you take lightly, because you're putting kids on a bus for, you know, could be quite a longer time.
And I'm sorry, you mentioned maybe you would need to bring in more portables if this doesn't. How many do you have district-wide? How many portables are you using?
We, in Battleground, one thing we started using in the last, probably 10 years, are what we call modular buildings, which are 10plexes. So those are a little bit more permanent structure, so I'm not sure if we have
most of our, we built most of our campuses, our newer campuses are designed with that core facility, but also room for a 10plex. So we have these 10plexes in the majority of our schools. We have the 10plexes. And those are, you know, I think that's what we have done a good job in, is if you go to those 10plexes, you'll see they're beautiful facilities. I mean, they really are. And they don't have that feel for you know, as a portable does. But they're still outside of that, you know, outside of that core facility. We have, as we pointed out, we have a substantial amount of portables at the Glenwood-Lauren site, and we have additional portables at the Pleasant Valley site. I think that you would see, once we opened up those 2 new campuses and we opened up the new K-8, you would see a significant drop in the number of portables. I would guess that the majority of them would be gone.
Okay. But keeping the 10plexes.
Right, but keeping the 10plexes just provides that extra space.
Sure. And how many schools are in the district?
18
schools.
And one is a leased facility.
The camp.
Yeah.
Right, is a leased facility.
Where's that at? I don't know where that one's at. In
Just,
Battleground?
it's in Battleground, just north of Battleground, right off of 503. Pretty much, you
It's
know where
just
the
north
Fred
of
Meyer
Chief
is.
Thumbtack in
Oh,
Captain
okay.
Captain Strong.
Oh,
It's
okay.
next to Captain
It's
Strong.
basically next to
Oh,
Captain
okay.
Strong.
I'm paid attention to it there.
Yeah.
So anyway.
And it has some challenges associated with it as well. For instance, it doesn't come with a whole bunch of parking. So
Yeah,
if you ever try to drive by Cam in the morning, it is
everybody's getting dropped off.
right. It
Yeah.
is a traffic jam over there. So
Okay. I know what's that.
Anything else we need to know? Anything else voters need to know or should ask?
Well, again, I want to emphasize that I think it's a great opportunity for us to provide equitability across the district, equitable facilities across the district at a reasonable tax rate for our citizens, a tax rate that is projected to go down from the current tax rate. So I think we can really provide something that all of our citizens can be proud of, at really what we think is a pretty reasonable rate for our voters.
I really am proud of the work that we've done for kids and for learning and for just the social emotional supports that we've given kids over the years. But as Mark pointed out, there's a real equity issue when it comes to facilities. You go to Tukes and Daybreak or
You mean within the
Amboy or
district?
Yes.
or Chief, and you go to those buildings and you're like, wow, this is nice. This is really nice stuff. And then you go to someplace like Lauren, and you just go, yikes. We need to do something for these people. And Mark has used the analogy, which I really like, is this idea of a 20-year-old car. You can take care of your car. You can take care of it. You can take it to servicing and do everything right with it. But you start to get to 20 years old, and you got to question, how much money am I going to put into it? And that's really where we are with these buildings.
That are 60 years old.
Yeah, that are 60 years
50,
old.
still-
60, 40
And
years
still
old.
need to drive that car every day like
Yes.
we do with our schools. We can't
Yeah,
put the
we
schools
can't put
away
them
in
in
the
the
garage
garage.
when it's 30, 40, 50
We got
years old.
2,000 more kids to put in the back seat.
Try to go to the drive-in with that. If there are drive-ins, I'm not sure.
Certainly.
They're gonna spill a lot of root beer.
Great, well, thank you very much.
Thank you for
Thank
the
you.
opportunity.
Yeah,
I
we really
appreciate it
appreciate
greatly.
the opportunity. I think, again, part of our process in the bond is really reaching out not only in the community, but outside the community. We've talked to the CRDC, we've met with the Columbian, we've met
The city council,
the city council,
the Chamber of Commerce.
Yeah,
We've really tried to involve everybody.
Well, schools are going to be a component of growth, I would think. If
Yes.
if I was moving to Clark County and wondering where to bring my family, I would look at the schools
Yeah.
if I was a
Yeah.
younger person. And what kind of facilities and how far is the school from the house and things like that. So
I was over at Glenwood, as I mentioned, I was over at Glenwood yesterday, and I was getting ready to leave, and there were 3 new parents, and 3 groups of parents in the main office registering.
kidding.
Yeah,
Wow.
because it's mostly those apartment complexes right off 119th. And
Oh, yeah,
they're,
right.
They're only partially done. So
Right.
as they continue to
Okay.
they continue to open up a new building and a new building and a new building,
Oh,
those
they just
students
keep coming
are
all
filled
year
right
round. into
into Glenwood. And I heard one of the parents was saying, because they were doing a little tour for them, one of the parents goes, "This place is crowded."
that's sort of a new phenomenon too, isn't it? As housing prices have gotten higher,
Yes.
you're seeing a higher ratio
Yeah.
of students coming out of apartment
Yes,
complexes.
we are. We're
than
actually
you used to.
seeing more multifamily.
Yeah, so you have to change your ratio when you
Yes,
project your
yes.
populations.
Of all the inventory we have of multifamily in the district, just in the last 6 years, that's been a 30% growth just in
Wow.
multifamily.
In the multifamily, right?
Yeah, well,
Battleground
Battleground didn't have a big stock of multifamily.
No, we
No.
didn't.
Yeah,
No,
Battleground
so-
did not have apartments, and now, you go over by Rinco, and there's all those apartments, then down 119th, there's apartments being built in the interior of Battleground.
There's
and
some
so-
by
Is there? I didn't
Yeah.
notice that.
Yeah.
I believe you.
Yeah, so that's a big difference, and you're exactly right, for these younger families, buying a $300,000 house, which
It's a
seems to be
challenge.
the starter house nowadays, is a challenge, so they're moving into these apartments.
Yeah.
Well, 10 or 15 years ago, the Battleground houses were a little bit cheaper, and so that's
Yeah.
where you'd find a lot of younger families moving
Right.
out, but they
Right.
would buy the 3-bedroom
Right.
detached,
Right,
and I don't know if they're doing that anymore.
yeah.
So some of the newer houses along 119th Street there, is it? Anyway, they look like they're nicer, they're more of
They're-
a move-up house.
Yeah.
Well,
They
yeah,
are.
and in Pleasant Valley, for instance, right around the Pleasant Valley campus, there was $500,000 houses.
Oh, yeah, there was always that nice subdivision
Yeah.
just to the south there,
Right.
but there's more and more houses going up, but I think they really want to be near WSU too.
Yeah, yeah, and it's a great,
Right.
convenient, access to the freeway and
Yeah, right.
great location. So.
Well, and Philida on the other side there is kind of built up, because
Right.
that's where I live, so,
Right.
all
Yeah.
the vacant lots around my house are gone.
And that's a key component of it too. And in the Evergreen video we were watching there, John was talking about, we're almost built out. And the same thing I think is true for, Vancouver.
Yeah,
So
Vancouver will tell you the
they're
same
almost
thing.
built out. So
Yeah.
then
So
where are you gonna go?
You guys are the,
Right.
yeah,
Right. Where's
Yeah,
the land?
Yeah.
And we expect it.
Camas.
Yeah, and we expect it to be that incremental creep, it's starting in the south and then it'll continue to move up and up and up and up, so, yeah, it's,
And we're seeing more students coming from the multifamily than they've done in the past. That's increased too.
Right.
Preliminary enrollment study is showing that data.
That makes
We've
sense.
seen it,
Getting
but
more
now,
important.
yeah. Yeah, you see the younger families that are.
That's gonna increase your growth even more at the south end because they're gonna be more dense.
More
So,
dense,
Yeah, interesting. Okay.
Thanks.
Well, thanks
Great.
again
Well,
for coming
thank you
by.
very much.
Yeah,
Thank
much
you.
appreciated. Thank you for the opportunity.